Greetings, saints. I hope you're doing well. We are in day 28 of our Bible reading where we've looked at Exodus 30, 31, and 32. I'll be giving a few lessons from these three chapters, starting with a high level of. In fact, I'd like to give my summary from chapter 19 because I see all of this as one connected unit. It would be good to have a big picture of chapter 19. So the Israelites had traveled all the way from Egypt and arrived here in chapter camp at Sinai, where there's a mountain where Moses is invited to go to the top of the mountain to give the law. This law is how the Israelites are going to live when they go into the land which was promised to their fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So before they get into the land, God wants to give them the law that this law is going to govern their lives. It's going to govern their religious life, going to govern their civil life in terms of how they can live with one another. And it's also going to govern their moral life, where God is telling them what is and bad, what is wrong and right. So Moses begins to receive the law from chapter 20 all the way to 3. Then in chapter 24, we see that the Israelites agree that they will follow the law. They agree that they will follow the words of this. And in a sense, a covenant is established, meaning that there's a covenant between God and that He will be their God and they will be like a marriage. It's as if God is going to be the husband and they're going to be the wife. In fact, we see this marriage metaphor used all the way in the Old Testament, which Israel as God's wife, God as their husband. So in this marriage, they are saying that they will follow the law that was given to, which were the chapters 20 and 23. So 24, the law or the covenant is established because the Israelites agree that they'll follow this law. Then Moses is invited back up to the mountain to receive further instructions. Now, these instructions have to do with the tabernacle, the ministry that will happen in the tabernacle, including its furniture. And the tabernacle is a tent, and this tent will have two segments. There'll be a holy place and a very holy place, the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant, well, which is furniture. Then we're going to see things like basins being mentioned, 30 Exodus we have read today, meaning we're going to be introduced to more furniture right here in chapter 30. But what we also saw previously, and as part of the ministry that will be taking place here in the tabernacle, we saw what should happen with the priests, how the priests should be ordained or consecrated, as well as the garments that they must put, the priestly clothing. So therefore, from chapter 25, God is focusing on the tabernacle and the ministry that is going to take place in the tabernacle. So chapter 30 and 31 of Exodus is a continuation, giving us more insights around what must be built or how this entire setup should be. We get to see the outer court. There must be basins for washing. Like everything is just being set up in a proper order. God is a God of order. And therefore is giving them the template, the design of not just the tabernacle, but also of the courtyard where the tabernacle is going to be, where the sacrifices are offered, the burning of incense, and this incense, this fire should burn continually as we learn. And therefore, chapter 30 and 31, we can say it brings to completion the instructions which were given. After those instructions were given, including the Ark of the Covenant, how it was going to be built, which we saw previously, the tabernacle, how it was going to be built, 30 and 31 giving us more furniture, more things like basins, and all of these things which are going to be part and parcel of the ministry that will take place. Because remember that they're going to be in a ministry of sacrifices. So as they're sacrificing and cutting animals, there'll be blood. They need to wash themselves. They need to burn. There'll be burnt offerings taking place. They need to have a table, the table of bread. So there's a lot of things mentioned which has to do with how the ministry take place, the tabernacle and the courtyard. Then Chapter 31 brings the end to all of those instructions, meaning that Moses can now finally go back to the people and tell them how they're going to behave. Because they've been told the law, but now they were being told what we can say the ministry which pertains to the tabernacle and the fact that God is planning to make his dwelling among them. Because he's making his dwelling among them in this tent, they need to consider this tent very holy. Ministry which must take place in this place must be a holy ministry. This is a sacred ministry because the God's presence is going to dwell in this as a seat, Ark of the Covenant. So there's a sense of God's presence, and therefore the ministry would look like this, with this fear as well, the fear of God, reverence for God. So 31, Moses is done receiving all of those instructions. Then 32, the problem. Instead of these people waiting patiently, they take matters in their own hands. They say, we don't know what's going on with it. Let's build ourselves an idol. These are the same people 40 days ago. Imagine, just 40 days. The same people 40 days ago who said that they will obey the words of the law. And at the very 10 commandments, it mentioned that they should not even make idols, they should not eat anything of that nature, worship, because they should have no other gods before God. Only God they worship. And yet they do such a deed. They build themselves a golden calf. What we see too. So that's the story as a whole. Where we saw from chapter 19, they camp the mountain. Moses receives the law. He tells them about the law. They agree that they will do it. He goes up for further instruction, but this instruction is related to the ministry of the tabernacle, taking too much time. And meanwhile, they are busy making idol. By the time he comes back, disappointed, even breaks the tablets of stone contained the 10 commandments. Right, so let's get into some of the few verses that I've highlighted. Then we can have a few lessons out of them. So in chapter 30, we see number 1, the altar of incense, part of some of the ministry that must take place where they're burning this in. And then we see a census that must take place where they're going to count the men. They're counting people 20 years and old and upward. So, and part of this census, as it is taken, it is going to include that they must pay half a shekel as part of an offering towards the fact that they participated in the census. What I like and what I've highlighted is verse 15, which says, "The rich shall not give more, and the poor shall not give less than the half shekel when give the Lord's offering to make atonement for lives." I think there's depth here, because when atonement of our lives, in fact, when we fast forward, because we should fast forward, when we fast forward, we come to Jesus, right? Jesus is the one who makes this atonement. He's the one who was crucified for you and me, right? And here as a picture, because remember, all of these things are fulfilled in Christ. It's a picture here where we're hearing that these people must not give any less, must not give any more. And it's such an interesting picture because it shows us that everyone comes with one thing: faith. In other words, faith is not expensive, it's affordable. The rich don't have an advantage, the poor don't have a disadvantage. Half a shekel. Not even a shekel, half. Now, the problem becomes when people want to go beyond what was said you must do. Like, no, but I'm rich, let me give extra. It's almost like us. when we're told that let's have faith in Jesus, salvation is by grace through faith. And then like, no, I'm strong. I want to add on top of all of that, I must be saved by fasting for days and nights. Because I'm stronger than, I know what, that's too small, God. Let me give you, I'm rich. But it says, the rich shall not give more. The poor shall not give less. So this is the currency for what? When you give the Lord's offering to make atonement. That's the currency. And it also shows us an interesting thing, that this thing cannot buy it by money. Like it's not buyable. You cannot buy salvation. It's priceless. It's so priceless that you might as well give half a shekel. That's how priceless it is to make atonement. And when we see it in Jesus, like he paid it all for. Priceless. It's valuable. Like we cannot pay money for what Jesus. He did it all for us. Right now, let me move. So the next verse is verse 33. Remember, we're in Exodus chapter 30, verse 33. So it says, whoever compounds any like it, or whoever puts any of it on an outsider shall be cut off from people. So here they're speaking about the oil that is to be composed, right? And in fact, it's interesting that this anointing oil, it's so holy for them that they must not copy it. It says, it is holy and it shall be holy to you. Like, don't copy it. Whoever compounds any like it, or whoever puts any of it on an outsider shall be cut off. Look, there's a similar verse in verse 38, right? Speaking of how they are to compose the incense as a perfumer. It says, whoever makes any like it to use as a perfume shall be cut off from it. As if God is putting a patent to his work. One was the holy anointing oil, here the incense, which they're going to compose like a perfumer, right? So when we see all of these things, what can we learn? Because there's sometimes people want to copy and give us something which is a copy of the God. And it's a sad reality where there's like this copycat ideas. People want to copy and mimic what God is doing. Now, I'm remembering the Pharaoh's magicians. Pharaoh's magicians wanted to copy, and they were trying to imitate what Moses was doing with his miracles, but they were not able to copy everything. Meaning that there's counterfeit. People want to copy the real thing, and go and take this copy and even try sell it or whatever. But God is giving this warning to the people, saying that this thing must not be holy. It shall be for you holy to the Lord. It's set apart. It's not meant to be copied out. So for me, this was just an interesting thing to observe as I highlighted. But when we even just think about it today, we can see how people want to copy from the holy things of God. Sometimes it's the Christians who are taking the holy things of God and they want to apply it outside of the context of God. Because what God is saying is that this thing, it is holy and shall be holy to you. Whoever compounds any like it, or whoever puts any of it on an outsider shall be cut off from his people. So there's a sense of, why are you taking this holy thing outside? Keep it in. All right, let me move from that point. In the next chapter 31, I love chapter 31. The reason I love chapter 31 is that we've been reading from chapter 25 all of these things that must be made, and probably some of us, self included, when we read them, like, yo, I have no idea how this thing looks like. I think if I was to do it today, I would struggle. There's too much instruction, there's too many dimensions. This design is too much. There's a lot that is being required here. This is why I love chapter 31, because it says, the Lord, verse 1, the Lord said to Moses, see, I have called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. I've called him by name, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with the ability and intelligence, with knowledge, all craftsmanship. I love it. Verse 8 even says, and not verse 8, verse 6. Verse 6 says, and behold, I have appointed with him Oholiab, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, and I've given to all able men ability, that they may make all that I've called. Now, the reason why I find this beautiful is that God did not just end giving this detailed instruction. He provided the Spirit of God. He provided them with the ability to, even us. God is not just saying, come and live holy lives. He gives us the Spirit that helps us. So there's a help from God. God doesn't just give the deep descriptions, the deep design to say, do this, do this, do this. You must cut it this way. Like it was a deep design. When we've been reading it, some of us were tempted to skip it because it's just a lot of information. But yet, God provides the Spirit of God. And I filled him with the Spirit of God, with the ability and intelligence. Imagine being filled with ability and intelligence to do this work. God enables his. Right? And then I noted verse 16, because in this segment we see the Sabbath being emphasized again. Like the Sabbath is one of the being mentioned. And verse 16 says, therefore the people of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath throughout their generations as a covenant forever. So there you have it. And in fact, one of those things which even today people struggle with: observe Sabbath, do we not observe Sabbath? Because of verses like this, where there's this institution of Sabbath for the people of Israel throughout all their generations. But I think one comfort I might offer to some people is to mention the very fact that it says of Israel. And later on in the New Testament, these people of Israel, the Jews, when the church was growing with Gentiles, the outsiders, they sat down to say, okay, what must we give the Gentiles to observe? They did give some things for the Gentiles to observe, but not Sabbath. So they did not want to burden the Gentiles with all the laws and culture, customs and traditions of the Jews. You can read it in the book of Acts. So the covenant forever, yes, but to whom? Are you the people of? Maybe you are. However, let's not forget that Sabbath is a gift from God. However you want to see it, always remember it's not a burden, it's a gift. Because God is giving us a gift of rest. Rest is good. Who here can fight against rest? Right, verse 18, I've highlighted, it says, and he gave to Moses, when he had finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, the 2 tablets of testimony, tablets of stone, then with finger of God. One of the reasons I highlight this is I remembered the same finger of God was mentioned back then when he was bringing the plagues to the Egypt. I will see the finger of God, the one which. So, finger of God gives the law, but the finger of God this judgment. So people must really have fear. It's the same finger. It's the same finger which can bless people, same finger which can guide people, guiding them with the law, but the same finger that brought judgment. So there we have it. We see, as I've mentioned in my introduction, that in this chapter we see the end of hearing from God, and now he must descend, deny his shock. He's going to find in Exodus 32 the golden calf. So I've highlighted verse 1, which says, when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from them, they gathered themselves together to Aaron and said, up, make us gods who shall go before us. For this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, do not know what has become. And a very familiar story, but one of the reasons I've highlighted it is because when Christians are now waiting for the return of Jesus, some of them have given up. They've done what people are doing what these Israelites did. Make us gods shall go before us. And one of the gods people have made is money. Jesus says you cannot serve both God and money. You cannot have two masters. Meaning that as we have hope in the return of Christ, what is our attitude towards other things which we can consider to be most important to us? Because that's what an idol is. Replacing Jesus with other attractions, with other focuses. Here, they replaced Moses and they replaced his God. We don't know what happened to him. And they make themselves God, make themselves an idol. Okay, so verse 10 says, now therefore, let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot. My wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them, in order that I may make a great nation. This is God. This is scary. Imagine God saying that, okay, let me alone, that my wrath burn hot. Why? Because of the sin that they create, golden calf. But look at Moses, the servant of God, verse 11. But Moses implored the Lord his God and said, oh Lord, why does your wrath burn hot against your people, whom you brought out of the land of the great power and mighty? So this begins the intercession, prayer that Moses made on behalf of these very people. He prayed for them. And even, tries to corner God, saying, what will the Egyptians say? That you took them out just to come and kill them here. But all of this just goes to show how great a leader Moses was. Leaders should pray for their people. They should intercede. When their people are sinning, leaders don't just get up and start doing whatever some are doing now. Actually, the Bible says in Galatians 6, someone falls, you must restore them. The leaders must seek to restore, must seek to love, must seek to bring up, must seek, pray, intercede. Moses had such a heart. Right. So verse 18 says, which I've highlighted, but he said, it is not the sound of shouting for victory, the sound, the cry of, but the sound of singing that I hear. So the context here is that, if you read it nicely from verse 16, the tablets were the work of God and were the writing. The writing was the writing of God engraved. Joshua heard the noise of people as they shouted. He said to Moses, there is a noise of war in the camp. Then here, Moses saying, no, that's not it. It's not the sound of shouting for victory, or the sound of the cry of defeat, or the sound of singing I hear. Now, the reason I highlight this is because different sounds that people can make, and I'm not trying to stretch things here. I'm just trying to show that these people might have been making shouts of praise, but when idle. Just because people are loud doesn't mean that they are for the Lord. Different reasons people can cry out. They can sing, but to whom? They can sing, but to whom? And then verse 20 here says, he took the calf that they had made and burned it with fire and ground it powder and scattered it on the water and made the people of Israel drink it. I just highlight this in red to show Moses' anger was burning here as well because of what happened in verse 19. As soon as he came near the camp, he saw the calf and dancing. So that shout, that noise, that the noise was of people dancing. But to what? Just because people are making noise or singing doesn't mean that they're singing. Okay, verse 23. For they said to me, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man brought us out of Egypt, do not know what has become of him. Okay, so I'm highlighting this verse, which is still confirming the very first verse in the chapter. Say that these people wanted a God for themselves because they did not want to wait upon patience. Are we going to wait upon Jesus faithfully? So I'm repeating the same point I mentioned. Just our wait for Jesus to be faithful. All right, verse 26. Then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, who is on the Lord's side? Come to me. All the sons of Levi gathered around him. So I highlight this because something we spoke about back when we were reading the blessings and cursing that Jacob mentioned. 49, we saw how the Levites were also to be scattered because of the sin that had happened earlier. But here it seems like a sense of redemption because of what they did. They sided with God. They sided with Moses and with God. That way, now their scattering, which is going to be fulfilled because of what Jacob said, becomes of a scattering of priests. They're being scattered because they're priests. Whereas Simeon was not the case. He was just scattered. Right, and then verse 29 says, and Moses said, today you have been ordained for the service of the Lord, each one at the cost of his son and brother, so that you might bestow a blessing upon. So again, this is exactly what I was talking about, that they've been ordained for the service of because of their zeal, right? The fact that they sided with God. All right, and then the last verse today, verse 32. This is Exodus 32, verse 32. But now, if you forgive their sin, but now, if you will forgive their sin, but if not, please blot out of the book that you have read. It's a very dangerous statement. What a prayer. What a leader. What Moses is saying is that God, if you won't forgive these people, remove my name from the book of life, the book that you have written. Imagine he's saying that I must die with the people. I must be blotted out. That's leadership, where it's not just about you by yourself, but actually you are there for the people you're leading, even to the cost of saying, God, you can even remove my name. Imagine that cost. This is Moses leading with God with the people. And again, I've mentioned it earlier as well, but leaders should pray for their people, intercede for their people, and seek for people to be restored, not for people broken down and thrown out.